So before we continue with the installation of the pistons, I just want to say a few words about the bearings which we're going to replace. This is the bearings which we removed from the con rod, and yeah, actually they didn't look so bad. This is the lower bearing, which has little bit of wear, cosmetic wear, nothing crazy, but yeah, it's not a bad idea to change them. But before that, I just want to show you how to install them, because it can be a little bit tricky. So we can clearly see on the con rod side, let me see where it was. It's not going to be so clearly to see it, but it has marking on it. So hopefully you guys are going to be able to see this S here on the con rod where the bearing should be installed. So we have S here, and if we take a look on the bearing which was installed there, we're going to see the same S. So this bearing shell was installed on the con rod side, and on the con rod cap we don't have anything like a letter, and on the bearing on the back, once again, nothing. So just to show you the difference, if you lay them one to each other, you can clearly see that you can mess them up, because they are in design, they are the same. With this key here, they are the same, so you can mess them up. But as we can see, the numbers, yeah, the numbers are different. And yeah, especially with this S. So I have seen people installing them wrong, which can lead to premature wear of the bearings, which can lead to total engine failure. Most of the time I have seen these bearings to be installed, let me show you, because this is the set which most of the time comes, and they are coming like 6 normal bearings and 6 sputter bearings. So let me show you the name. So as we can see, we don't have S, we have this sputter here. Kind of hard to show you. Yeah, so we have this, we don't have the S, but this is the bearing shell which we need to install on the con rod side, not on the cap. And I have seen people, because they are coming like that, let me show you. 6 of the sputter bearings are in the package like that, to one to each other, and the other 6, the normal bearings, are once again on the other side of the package. And most of the time my colleagues are just taking bearing after bearing like that and start to install them one by one. So as I told you, they're going to fit without any problems, because this key is identical on the both bearing shells. And I have seen colleagues of mine that have installed bearings like that, 2 sputter bearings on one con rod and 2 normal bearings once again on one con rod. To install it properly, you're going to want, first of all, clean for any debris and oil the surface where the bearing is going to lie, and you're going to take the sputter, which was this shiny one. Once again, this is the sputter shell, and you're just going to lay it down like that. And the bearing cap actually is pretty easy to orient how to be installed, because these con rods are braked, and you can install it only one way. If you try to install it on the wrong way, it's not going to fit. So it's pretty easy to lay it down. Let me see how it was. Yeah, like that. As you can see, it's fitting perfectly. So if you try on the other way, it's not going to fit. So it's only one way to install it. And I have made my own markings, which is the side of the timing chain, but actually conveniently enough we have arrows on the pistons. Where it was, yeah, This is the arrow of the piston. As we can see, this is pointing the timing chain side, the front of the engine. The timing chain is here. We need to install the piston like that because the arrow is pointing to the front of the engine. So now I'm going to install, as we saw, I installed the reinforced bearing on the conrod and the lower bearing shell on the cap, like so. So like that. For now I'm not going to put assembly loop in the bearing because once again I want to measure the clearances on the journals of the crankshaft, and to do so we don't need to have any lubricant there. It should be dry. So that's why I'm not going to put any assembly loop. For now, I'm going to keep it like that. I'm going to do the same on all of the 6 pistons. Okay, this is all the old bearings, the big end bearings. This is the caps which we're going to need to install, plus 2 more there. And as we saw, we installed all the pistons with the piston rings. Now we're going to need to measure the big end bearing clearance on the journal of the crankshaft. For that reason on the big end bearings a little bit more difficult than the main bearings, because you're going to want to do it 2 by 2 in this engine setup, of course, because on a V8 it's going to be different. But we're going to start measuring firstly on cylinder number 1 and cylinder number 6, after that cylinder number 2 and 5 and 3 and 4. So, as I told you, I'm going to bring up the conrod until I am able to install it on the journal without lubricating anything. I'm just going to install the plastic gauge and we're going to see what is the clearance with the new bearings. And here for this job I'm going to reuse the old bolts I'm going to torque them to spec, but I'm going to use the old bolts, and when we are done with the measurement and if everything is okay, we're going to install brand new bolts. Okay, so I measured the clearance of the cylinder number 1 and cylinder number 6, and as we can see, probably hope you guys going to be able to see, we have pretty much around 0.040, somewhere around that, in that region. So the clearance is pretty much the same as on the main bearings. Yeah, we are in spec. Let me show you cylinder number 1. Let me show you like that, 0.040 or 0.042, somewhere around that. Hopefully you are able to see it. So yeah, we are at spec. So after measuring the clearance on these two journals, now I'm going to push down a little bit the con rod. I'm going to put some assembly loop on the bearing and on the journal itself, of course. And I'm going to reassemble these two con rods with a brand new con rod bolts. You're going to say, wait, first you need to measure all the 6 con rod journals and then start reassembling with the new bolts. Probably you're going to be right, because if something is wrong, we're going to need to remove the crankshaft, we're going to need to regrind it to the proper sizing and then reinstall everything back together. But from experience, most of the time, when you have this clearance on these two journals and when you see the wear of all the bearings, the old bearings, you're going to know that the clearances of all the journals going to be pretty much the same, just from the pattern of the wear of all the bearings on the con rods. But still, just for video purposes, I'm going to do each of them just to show you that the clearances is going to be somewhere in that region, 0.038, 0.040, just to prove you that everything is going to be fine. Това са горе-долу с интериора. И трябва да го поръчам, нали там. 1000-2000 евро колкото е.
Колко? Избягайте магнита.
Ама нямат доставки Само в тяхната страна, в смисъл само за Финландия. И сега им писах едни имейли там.
А UK нямат?
Нямат нищо.
Виж гапката, мисля, че имат някъде в скандинавиците.
Okay, a journal on cylinder number 3 and cylinder number 4. So once again, bigger than 0.50, less than 0.038. So somewhere around once again 0.40, and on journal number 4, once again the same. So as I told you, the same as the other, but let's check journal number 2 and 5 to be 100% sure. Okay, so the last two bearing journals on journal number 2 and 5. Once again, pretty close to 0.038, much bigger than 0.050, and here is pretty much the same scenario, little bit smaller than 0.038. So as we can see, all the bearing journals are pretty much equal, so I'm just going to once again clean up the wax from the plastic gauge. I'm going to put some assembly loop, going to put once again a little bit assembly loop on the bearings, and I'm going to reassemble these two caps, and pretty much we are going to be ready with the installation of the pistons and the con rods. Okay, so after the installation of the pistons, the con rods and everything tightened up to the crankshaft. Pretty much the bottom end is completely assembled. Only thing that left is the oil pump. I'm going to install it when I install the cylinder head. But before we install the cylinder head, we need to determine what cylinder head gasket we need to use. Because the cylinder head gasket which I removed from this engine is this one. Yeah, when you're looking at it like that, you are not going to understand anything. But on these engines and on the most other engines, every cylinder head gasket has some marking on it, so to know which type you are using, how much thick gasket you are using. And in our case, the cylinder head gasket has these two dots here. As you can see, we have two dots on it, which means this is the second thicker gasket that this engine can use. So we have in total three types of cylinder head gaskets. With one dot is the most thinner cylinder head gasket, with two is the middle thickness, and with three dots is the most thicker gasket. When you get to the point with three dots and still the pistons are hitting the valves, you don't have any other choice but change the cylinder block, or like I did on my engine, regrind the pistons. But still I'm not recommending this. As we saw, someone have been here because right now the engine is running the two dots cylinder head gasket, which means is using the middle thicker cylinder head gasket. If we were regrinding the cylinder block, probably we were going to need to go with the three dotted cylinder head gasket, which is going to be the last one for this engine. So now for measuring this, once again I'm going to use my straight edge, which I showed earlier in the video. So I'm going to rotate the cylinders, the pistons, until piston number 3 and piston number 4 hits exactly top dead center. This is going to be a little bit tricky because you need to be 100% sure that you are exactly there, because the measurement is really with small margin. So something like that. So you're going to want to have completely dry surface. Once again I'm going to remove the grease from my straight straight edge. I'm putting grease just to not have any rust on it, because any rust on this straight edge is going to ruin it. So now I'm going to just put it to lay down flat on the pistons like that. This is just a paper from the manufacturer. I didn't play to remove it, because every time I'm measuring on the side which is clean. The camera is set up pretty much on the surface on the cylinder block, and as we can see, this is the straight edge and this is the cylinder block surface, the flat face of the cylinder block. And if we go a little bit closer, we're going to see that we have gap between the straight edge and the cylinder block, and our job is to measure this gap between these two surfaces. For this reason, once again, we're going to use our feeler gauge. So I'm going to start with, let's say, 0.80, and I'm going to try to fit it here, and it fits, as we can see. Oops. You need to be sure that you are flat to the surface and it fits. So we're going to raise it to 0.90. Once again, this is in millimeters, not inches. And 0.90. Oops. Doesn't want to go in. So let me try 0.85. I'm still not able to install it. But before that, I need to be sure that I am exactly at top dead center. As you can see, when I'm moving the pistons, the straight edge is moving. So let me redo once again 0.90. Yeah, I'm still not able to fit it there. So I got it from the first try. 0.80. Yes. 0.80 goes in, but I don't feel a drag. 0.85 should go with little bit resistance, but it doesn't want. Okay, no matter what I'm doing, I'm not able to fit 0.85, so I guess our number is somewhere around 0.80, 0.82. So once again, about the gasket which we're going to use. As we can see, we're going to use once again L-ring cylinder head gasket with the 2 dots. Why we're going to use a 2-dot gasket is because, as we measured on the cylinder block, let me remove it. As we measured on the cylinder block, we saw that we have a clearance of the piston to the cylinder block, the flat surface of the cylinder block, 0.80. So this is the clearance between the piston crown and the cylinder block. But we need to take into consider how much we have removed from the cylinder head, which is 0.06. And the other thing which we need to take in consideration is that previously someone have done a cylinder head job on this engine. So in the best case scenario, he have removed at least once again 0.06 millimeters from this cylinder head. So in total, we have 0.80 clearance on the cylinder block plus 2 times 0.06, which is 0.12, equals 0.92, which is exactly the spec for the 2-dotted cylinder head gasket. And that's why I decided to use this cylinder head. Probably with 1 dotted cylinder head still is going to be okay, but I decided to play it safely, and that's why I decided to take this cylinder head. is going to fit perfectly, and I'm going to be sure that I'm going to have enough clearance between the cylinder crown and the valves. If I go with the one dotted cylinder head gasket, it's going to be a little bit doubtful. Is everything's going to be okay? Probably it's going to be, but it's not going to harm anyone if we go with this cylinder head gasket. I'm going to once again clean up as good as I can the cylinder block with the degreaser, with the brake cleaner. I'm going to do the same with the cylinder head. And yeah, don't forget to install your dowel pins when installing everything, because this is a big help with those dowel pins. Yeah, it's possible to install it without them, but it's much easier when you have them. Okay, so a little bit of an update. I was planning to install the cylinder head, but before that I just decided to do a quick check on the valve job which the machine shop did, and in my surprise I found out that I had in total 4 leaking valves, 4 out of 24. And yeah, they were not leaking like crazy. For sure the car was going to run without any issues, but I decided to go extra mile and to reset the valves, the 4 valves which were leaking. Most of the time the way I'm checking the valves is just taking some diesel fuel, and I'm filling the intake runners from these points and these points. Actually this is the exhaust side, so this is the intake ports. I'm filling them up while the cylinder head is tilted like that. I'm filling them and I'm watching from below which valve is leaking. And on the intake side we had only 1 valve which was leaking, and on the exhaust side, which I filled the ports from here, we have in total 3 leaking valves. After little bit of work, the 4 valves are reseated and are not leaking anymore. Now I'm sure the whole 24 valves are not leaking and everything should be fine. And yeah, this is how it looks from below. As I told you, the 4 valves which were, I marked them with the marker. This was the intake valve which was leaking, and on the exhaust side it was this one here and these 2 ones. So only 4 valves out of 24. And as I told you guys, the valves were not leaking like crazy or anything like that, but still it had small leakage, so that's why we decided to reseat them. So let's continue with the installation of the cylinder head. I decided to buy a brand new dowel pins. Let me install them. So this is the 2 dowel pins which is aligning the cylinder head to the engine block. So I'm just going to place it like that. I'm going to need to hammer it down a little bit. So just a second. I just want to be sure that they are hammered down to the bottom of the sleeve. So now I'm going to install the cylinder head gasket. So right, because we have dowel pins, it's going to be much more easier. Yes, it's not impossible to install cylinder head without dowel pins. I have done it. It's not big of a deal, but like that is much more easier. So just one thing to consider when installing a new cylinder head gasket: you need to always check your rivets on the cylinder head gasket, like this one. Are you guys seeing what I'm showing? Hopefully. Like this rivet here. We have 3 rivets in total on this flat surface of the cylinder block, and we need to be sure that they are not sitting anywhere in the flat surface in the cylinder block, because if they sit like this rivet here, we're going to have some hard time sealing with the cylinder head. They're going to lift up a little bit the cylinder head, and you're going to have once again failure. So you need to be sure that these rivets are not sitting on the cylinder block flat surface, because I have seen cylinder head gaskets like on, I don't remember the brand, but they had some hard time with the rivets, and yeah, just keep in mind, check your rivets, where are they located. This one, yes, it's sitting on the flat surface on the cylinder block, but the design of it is a little bit different than the other ones, so this is not going to give us some problems, and that's why it is a little bit tapered. So let me grab up the cylinder head and try to install it. Okay, let's try to install it. Like that. It sits nice and flat. As you can see how it's snapped in the dowel pins. That is why it's so easier with dowel pins. Once again, it's not essential, but it's much more easier. So we're going to use brand new bolts, of course. Let's see what we have here. If we manage to open it. These bolts are actually kind of pricey because, as many of you probably know, the cylinder head bolts for diesel engines are much more stronger than on the petrol engines because of the compression. So let me take out all the bolts. And the thing which I'm going to do is to lubricate the threads on the bolt. So just a second. So I'm going to lubricate all the threads on all of the bolts, plus the shim, the washer on the bolt, plus the head on the bolt. So once again, I'm going to lubricate the threads, the washer, and the head of the bolt. I'm going to do the same for all of the bolts. I'm actually doing this probably on all BMW engines when we are talking about cylinder heads, especially on aluminum blocks like this one. I'm always lubricating the threads, the washers, and the head of the bolt. And if I need to be honest, I never had an issue with that. But you never know. If someone came with some severely overheated engine, this is really killing the aluminum. When it reaches really high temperature, the aluminum it starts to rip out when you start torquing the bolts. So there are cases which you cannot do anything, and the only way is just to change the cylinder block. So hopefully this engine didn't have problems like this with crazy overheating or something like that. Hopefully everything is going to be okay. So this is the chart which Euring provided with the cylinder head gasket, and this is the recommended torque spec. First of all, we're going to torque all the bolts to 80 Newton meters. Actually, I'm going to torque them to 40, and after that 80 Newton meters. I'm not going to straight away start with 80, but this is just my thing. And after that, we're going to swap it off. We're going to undo the bolts. After we undo the bolts, once again, we're going to torque them to 50 Newton meters, and after that, 2 times 90 degrees. So this is the torque spec. I know it's a little bit time consuming, but this is what it should be done. So let's start with the 40 Newton meters. Okay, this was the first stage, 40 Newton meters. So just a tip, it's not big of a deal if you don't follow on 100% the pattern which is given here, 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. The important thing is to start from the center and little by little to go to the end of the cylinder head. So yeah, it's a good idea to use crisscross pattern, but it's not big of a deal if you start from this bolt or from this bolt. The important thing is to start from the center and little by little to go to the outer part of the cylinder head. So let's continue with the 80 Newton meters. Okay, this was the second stage, 80 Newton meters. The next step is to slacken off all of the bolts. Okay, so for slackening off all of the bolts, I'm going to go a little bit overkill, but let's start from the outer side of the cylinder head. All the bolts are slackened off, and we're going to start once again with the next step, which is 50 Newton meters. Okay, this was the next step, 50 Newton meters. Now we're going to continue with the degreeing the bolts. So we're going to do 2 steps with 2 times 90 degrees. So I'm just going to mark all of the bolts, just to know have I missed some of the bolts, just to be sure that all of them going to be rotated in total 180 degrees. So this is a good way how to keep in order what you're doing. So all of these dots should go on the 180 degrees from now, which means all the dots of the bolts should be pointing at me when we are done with the both 90 degrees torquing of these cylinder head bolts. So I haven't eaten today, so hopefully I'm going to have enough power to torque these bolts. It's always easier when you have a second person with you to hold your angle meter, but yeah, I hope I'm going to be fine. It's not my first rodeo. Okay. Okay, this was the first 90 degrees, and now is the last step for torquing these cylinder head bolts, which is the hardest one. One more time 90 degrees. So all the bolts are torqued to spec, as I told you, 80 Newton meters, slackening off the bolts, after that 50 Newton meters plus 2 times 90 degrees. And just to show you, all of the dots are pointing to me in this case. So this is how I keep track. Have I missed some of the bolts? By missed I mean degreeing the bolts. So yeah, once again, no problem, doesn't matter it was aluminum block because some colleagues are a little bit scared of torquing to spec bolts on aluminum BMW box, but as we saw, we didn't have any problems. Everything is torqued and it feels how it should be feeling when I torqued it. Some tip for some of you guys: when you're doing degrees, it's always a good idea to try to make the degree, in our case 90 degrees, in one smooth turn. Don't try to do it in several turns because it's going to be much more harder and stressful for the bolt. When you do it on one smooth turn, all the degrees, it's much better. I know it's a little bit hard, but this is in the base case scenario. And yeah, I know that I should have used this tool for measuring the protrusion on the piston, but yeah, if I need to be honest, I found it 2 or 3 days later after installing the cylinder head gasket. I found it in some box which I was not guessing that is going to be there, but not big of a deal. As we saw, we were able to measure the protrusion. This is not the only way with this tool. Probably you guys are guessing how it's going to be done. Let me show you. Like that, and you're just going to measure how much the piston is going to lift the indicator cock, like so, the indicator gauge or cock. But yeah, this is the idea. By using this tool, just measuring exactly how much is the protrusion of the piston, but we made it with the straight edge without any issues. But in the perfect scenario, this is the right tool you're going to want to use for doing this job, because I know there will be some good people commenting in the video that why you didn't use this. This is why.